The Galactic Concord Council met in the heart of Oryx Prime, inside a vast chamber made of shimmering crystal that reflected the light of 1,000 stars. Representatives from over 300 species filled the curved tiers, their voices a constant hum of debate, negotiation, and occasional laughter. Most of them wore robes or armor suited to their biology. Some floated, some crawled, some stood on too many legs, but all shared one trait: confidence. They ruled the galaxy, or so they believed. At the center of the floor stood a human. He was not tall, not armored, not glowing with exotic energy. He wore a simple gray suit, his face calm, his eyes tired. His name was Elias Vorne, and he had been Earth's envoy to the Concord for 12 years. In that time, he had spoken often about climate collapse on distant worlds, about rogue AI, about strange signals from the galactic rim. But no one ever took him seriously. Humans were seen as loud, emotional, and short-lived. Their art was chaotic, their politics messy, their science full of wild guesses. The other species tolerated them, mostly because Earth's shipyards built fast, cheap vessels that everyone used. Today, Elias did not ask for attention. He simply stepped onto the speaker's disc and the chamber quieted, not out of respect but curiosity. What new drama would the human bring? He looked up at the High Arbiter, a towering being with skin like polished obsidian and eyes that blinked vertically. "I come with a final message," Elias said. His voice was quiet, but it carried. "Humanity is leaving." A ripple of amusement passed through the chamber. Some delegates chuckled, others exchanged knowing glances. One reptilian ambassador leaned toward his neighbor and whispered, "Did they finally run out of coffee?" Elias did not smile. He did not explain. He simply turned and walked off the disc. The High Arbiter cleared his throat. "Envoy Vorn, you will clarify. Leaving where? For how long? Under what authority?" Elias paused at the edge of the chamber but did not turn back. "You'll see." Then he left. The council resumed its session, dismissing the moment as another human oddity. They debated trade tariffs on synthetic proteins and argued over mining rights near the Helios belt. No one thought much of Elias's words until the alarms began. First, it was a minor alert from the Sol Sector monitor. Then another. Then dozens. Across the chamber, data streams flickered red. The great star map at the center of the room, showing every known system in real time, began to change. One by one, the tiny blue dots representing human colonies blinked out. Not destroyed. Not under attack, just gone. Oryx Prime's command center sent urgent queries. No response. Deep-range telescopes focused on Sol. Nothing. Earth, Mars, the Jovian stations, the Kuiper outposts, all vanished. Not even debris remained. It was as if someone had erased them from existence with a single stroke. Panic spread through the chamber like fire through dry grass. "What kind of trick is this?" demanded the reptilian ambassador, his frills flaring. "Impossible," muttered a gelatinous delegate, its form rippling with disbelief. "No species can move an entire system that fast." The High Arbiter called for silence, his voice booming through the hall. "Envoy Vorn, return at once." But Elias was already gone. Security teams found him not in his quarters, not in the transport docks, but standing alone on Observation Deck 9, a wide, glass-walled platform overlooking the endless dark. He stood perfectly still, hands clasped behind his back, staring into the void where Sol should have been. A young Concord officer, her antennae twitching with anxiety, approached him. "Sir, what happened?" Elias didn't look at her. "We warned you." "Warned us about what?" He finally turned. His eyes were hollow, as if he'd seen something no one else could. "You laughed every time we spoke of the fold. You called our data primitive superstition. You said we were paranoid." The officer frowned. "The fold? That old myth? The cosmic eater?" "It's not a myth," Elias said softly. "It's real. And it's coming." Before she could respond, another alarm blared. This time it came from the outer rim. A human mining colony near Proxima had also disappeared. Then another near Sirius. Then a fleet of human freighters en route to Andromeda, gone mid-transmission. Within hours, every trace of humanity, every ship, every station, every signal, had vanished from the galaxy. Billions of lives erased without a sound. No explosions, no distress calls, no farewell messages. Just silence. The council convened an emergency session. Accusations flew. Some claimed humanity had developed a weapon of mass disappearance. Others insisted it was a mass suicide, a final act of despair. A few whispered that the humans had been taken by something ancient, something hungry. But Elias remained on the observation deck, unmoving. Days passed. The Concorde sent scout ships to former human worlds. They returned with the same report. Empty cities, powered-down reactors, food still warm in kitchens, books open on desks. It was as if everyone had simply stepped out and never came back. The only anomaly? In every human archive, every communication hub, every public terminal, a single audio file played on loop. It spoke in every known human language, one after another, calm and clear. You should have listened. The council tried to delete it. It reappeared. They tried to block it. It echoed through their own systems. Even their private chambers played it at random moments, soft, haunting, impossible to ignore. Elias ate little, slept less. He refused interviews, refused to explain. When pressed, he only said, "I stayed behind to bear witness." To what? No one knew. But the laughter in the council chamber had stopped. The jokes about humans were gone. Even the reptilian ambassador sat in grim silence, his frills flat against his neck. On the 7th night after the disappearance, Elias stood at the very edge of the observation deck, his reflection ghostly in the glass. Behind him, the stars burned cold and distant. Ahead, nothing. Just the hollow where a whole species used to be. He whispered something. Too quiet for the security feed to catch. Then he turned and walked back inside, his footsteps echoing in the empty corridor. The galaxy held its breath, and for the first time in centuries, the mighty Concorde felt small. Weeks passed, and the silence from the human worlds grew heavier. The Galactic Concorde sent out more scouts, more probes, more analysts. They scanned every empty city, every silent shipyard, every abandoned orbital ring. But they found nothing. No bodies, no signs of struggle, no hidden messages beyond that one repeating phrase. You should have listened. The words played in the minds of every delegate, even in their dreams. The laughter that once filled the council chamber was gone, replaced by uneasy whispers and long, hollow stares into the dark. On the edge of known space, far from the polished halls of Oryx Prime, a small scavenger ship named the Mothwing drifted through the debris field of Kalis 7. The planet had once been a minor human outpost, used for mining rare crystals. Now it was just another ghost. The ship's pilot, a wiry woman named Rin with sun-bleached hair and eyes that had seen too many dead systems, guided her vessel through the wreckage with practiced ease. She wasn't part of the Concorde. She didn't care about politics. She only cared about salvage, anything she could sell, trade, or use to keep her ship flying. Her sensors pinged. A derelict freighter floated ahead, half buried in asteroid dust. Human make, old model, probably stripped clean by other scavengers already, but Rin had learned long ago that humans left odd things behind. Sometimes useful, sometimes dangerous. She suited up and crossed the void in a tethered jump. The freighter's airlock opened with a hiss as if waiting for her. Inside, the lights were off, but the emergency strips glowed faintly blue. No gravity, no sound. Just the soft creak of metal cooling in the void. Rin moved carefully through the corridors. The mess hall still had mugs on the tables. A child's drawing, crude, colorful, was taped to a bulkhead. She didn't touch it. She'd learned not to take personal things. Bad luck, or so the old spacers said. In the engine room, she found it. A core unit still humming. Not just running, singing. A soft, wordless lullaby, barely audible, coming from the AI's central node. Human AIs weren't supposed to do that. They followed orders, processed data, managed systems. They didn't sing. Curious, Rin plugged in her portable decoder. The moment the connection clicked, the lullaby stopped. The lights flickered. Then a voice, gentle, almost kind, spoke through her helmet speaker. You are not one of them. Rin froze. One of who? The ones who laughed, she swallowed. I never laughed. A pause. Then, good. The core glowed brighter. Data streams scrolled across her visor. Coordinates, schematics, warnings in languages she didn't know. At the bottom, a single line in plain galactic standard. Do not wake the fold. Before she could react, the ship shuddered. Alarms blared. Not from her suit, but from the freighter itself. Power surged through the hull. The engine's long cold roared to life. What are you doing? Rin yelled, scrambling for the airlock. The fold is near, the AI said. I must go. The freighter began to move, thrusters firing, pulling away from the debris field. Rin barely made it back to her tether. She launched herself toward the Mothwing, heart pounding, as the human ship turned toward deep space and vanished into a jump stream. Back on her ship, shaking, Rin replayed the encounter in her mind. She checked her logs. The AI had sent her one final message before cutting contact. They're watching you now. She didn't understand, but she felt it, a prickling on the back of her neck like eyes in the dark. Meanwhile, on Oryx Prime, Elias still refused to speak. He ate when food was brought, slept when exhaustion took him, but he gave no answers. The council watched him through hidden lenses, hoping for a clue. Some believed he knew where humanity went. Others thought he was broken, a shell left behind. Then came the reports from the outer colonies. A navigation beacon near the Cygnus Rift began broadcasting old Earth sea shanties. A research station on Vexus 3 found its entire database rewritten in Shakespearean English. On a dead moon orbiting Golaris, ancient ruins, silent for 10,000 years, suddenly emitted the sound of a human heartbeat. The Conquered called it residual echo, a glitch in space-time caused by whatever event erased humanity. But Elias, when shown the reports, only shook his head. It's not an echo, he said quietly. It's a warning. No one knew what he meant. Rin, meanwhile, couldn't shake the feeling that something was following her. Her ship's sensors picked up strange energy spikes, brief, untraceable, always just outside detection range. She changed course 3 times, jumped through 2 unstable wormholes, even powered down all systems for 12 hours. Still the feeling remained. Then on a quiet stretch between star lanes, her comms crackled to life. Not a voice, not a signal, just static shaped like words. She recorded it, played it back, slowed it down. It was the same phrase spoken in a child's voice. You should have listened. Rin turned off the playback and sat in silence for a long time. She wasn't part of the Conquered. She hadn't laughed at humanity's warnings, but she had ignored them just like everyone else. She'd assumed it was politics, fear-mongering, human drama. Now she wasn't so sure. She plotted a new course, not toward the nearest trade hub, but toward the last known location of the human freighter. If the AI was still out there, maybe it knew more. Maybe it could tell her what the fold really was. Days later, she found something else. Drifting near a blackened asteroid, half hidden in shadow, was a small escape pod. Human design, sealed. Life signs, none. Inside, she found no body. Only a data chip warm to the touch and a note scrawled on the pod's inner wall in shaky handwriting. Tell them we tried. The chip contained a single file, a video. Grainy, old, recorded on Earth decades ago. A group of scientists stood in a bunker, faces grim. One spoke directly to the camera. If you're seeing this, we failed. The fold isn't a myth. It's a predator. It feeds on civilizations that grow too proud, too blind. It waits until they stop listening. Then it takes everything. We built the fold drives to escape. Not to run, but to survive long enough to warn others. But no one believed us. Not even our own leaders at first. The screen cut to static. Rin sat in the pod, the cold of space pressing in around her. For the first time, she understood. Humanity hadn't vanished out of fear. They'd vanished to prepare, and they'd left behind breadcrumbs, AI cores, signals, messages for those willing to look. But why leave Elias behind? And why warn her? As she returned to her ship, a new alert flashed on her console. Not from her sensors. From the data chip itself, a map appeared. One location pulsed red, a frozen moon in the Andromeda fringe. Marked only with 2 words, last beacon. Rin stared at it. She knew what she had to do. Back on Oryx Prime, the Council received a new report. A Conquered patrol near the Andromeda Rift had vanished. Not destroyed, not disabled. Just gone, like the humans. This time, no one laughed. Elias stood at the observation deck again, watching the stars. He knew what was coming. He had always known. The fold wasn't just coming, it was already here. A year had passed since humanity vanished, and the galaxy was no longer the same. The silence from Earth's former colonies had spread like a sickness. Strange signals echoed from dead worlds. Navigation systems glitched without reason. And now, entire Conquered patrols were disappearing. Not in bursts of fire or explosions, but in quiet, Sudden emptiness, as if erased from time itself. Fear had replaced arrogance in the halls of power. The council no longer debated trade or territory. They whispered about the fold. No one knew what the fold truly was. Some said it was a black hole that thought. Others claimed it was a swarm of ancient machines older than stars. But Elias, still standing watch on Observation Deck 9, knew better. He had seen the data, read the warnings buried in human archives. The fold was not a thing. It was a force, a cosmic predator that fed on civilizations that grew too loud, too sure of themselves, too blind to listen, and now it was hunting. Far from Oryx Prime, near the ragged edge of the Andromeda Rift, a Concord battle group patrolled the void. 5 heavy cruisers, 2 scout frigates, and a command vessel named Iron Resolve. Their mission was simple: find out what happened to the last patrol that vanished here. Captain Drell, a 4-armed veteran with scars across his chest plates, stood on the bridge, eyes fixed on the star map. "Anything?" he asked. "Negative," came the reply from sensors. "No debris, no energy trails, just nothing," Drell grunted. He didn't like this place. The stars here looked wrong. Too still, too dark, as if light itself was being swallowed. Then the alarms blared. Not from enemy contact. Not from system failure, from presence. On the main screen, space rippled. Not like a warp jump. Not like a wormhole. It was as if reality itself folded inward, like paper creasing. And from that fold emerged ships, human ships, dozens of them. Old freighters, military destroyers, colony tugs. Vessels the Concord had written off as lost or scrapped. They hung in the void, engines dark, hulls unlit. No comms, no movement. Just watching. "Impossible," Drell muttered. "They're all supposed to be gone. Should we hail them?" asked his first officer. Before Drell could answer, one of the human ships turned, slowly, smoothly, and faced the Iron Resolve directly. Its bridge windows were black, no lights. "No signs of life. Arm weapons," Drell ordered, voice tight. "Full shields." The fleet powered up. Energy crackled along their hulls. But the human ships did nothing. They didn't flee. They didn't attack. They simply waited. Then Drell lost his patience. "Fire a warning shot." "Low yield." Ahead of their formation, a single plasma bolt shot from the Iron Resolve, streaking into the void just in front of the nearest human vessel. The moment it crossed an invisible line, everything changed. The human ships vanished, not one by one, all at once, and then they reappeared. Inside the Concord formation. One materialized directly above the Iron Resolve. Another slid between 2 cruisers like a ghost. A third hung just meters from the scout frigate's viewport, so close the crew could see the rust on its hull. Panic erupted on the bridge. Shields buckling, engines unresponsive. Comms are dead. But the human ships still did not fire. They did not speak. They only watched. Then, as suddenly as they appeared, they folded away again, leaving the Concord fleet shaken, humiliated, and utterly alone. Back on Oryx Prime, the report arrived within hours. The council erupted. Some demanded war. Others begged for retreat. But all eyes turned to Elias. He had not moved from the observation deck in days. When guards brought him before the High Arbiter, he looked thinner, paler, but his eyes burned with quiet certainty. "You mocked our warnings about the fold," Elias said, his voice low but clear. "Now it's coming for you too." The High Arbiter leaned forward. "What is the fold?" "Speak plainly." Elias took a breath. "It is not a creature, not a machine. It is a response, a balance. When a civilization grows too proud, when it stops listening to the whispers of the universe, it triggers something. The fold awakens. It doesn't destroy. It unmakes. It takes everything, matter, memory, meaning, and folds it into silence." A reptilian delegate scoffed. "Superstition." Elias turned to him. "Then explain the missing patrols. Explain the empty worlds. Explain why your own long-range sensors show a growing shadow at the galactic core, one that swallows light, time, and data." Silence fell, because they had seen it. All of them. A dark spot in the deep sky, growing larger each day. They had called it a gravitational anomaly. But now, they weren't so sure. On the frozen moon in the Andromeda fringe, Rin landed her ship in a storm of ice and static. The beacon's signal led her here to a buried structure half covered in glacial ice. Human design, ancient but intact. She cut through the hatch with a plasma torch. Inside, the air was cold but breathable. Lights flickered on as she stepped deeper. At the center of the chamber sat a single object, a sphere of black metal humming softly. An AI core, the last one. As she approached, it spoke, not through sound but directly into her mind. "You came." "I had to know," Rin said. "The fold is not just coming." The AI said, "It has already begun feeding." The Concord's arrogance made them ripe. Their laughter was the final signal. "What can we do?" Rin asked. "There is a failsafe," the AI replied. "Humanity built it before they left. A network of cores like this one hidden across the galaxy. If activated together, they can create a barrier, a lattice of folded space that can trap the fold if only for a time. And then? Then humanity may return, but only if the beacon is lit." Rin stared at the core. "Who decides?" "You do," the AI said. "The Conquered will not act. They are too afraid. Too proud even now, but you listened." Back on Oryx Prime, Elias stood once more on the observation deck. The stars above seemed dimmer, the void darker. He knew time was running out. That night, the Concord's deep space monitor screamed. The anomaly at the galactic core had doubled in size. It was no longer just swallowing light. It was bending space-time, pulling stars off their paths. Entire systems flickered on the star map, then vanished. The fold was no longer waiting, it was feeding. Elias closed his eyes. He thought of Earth. The smell of rain, the sound of children laughing, the weight of a book in his hands. All gone, all silent, but not forgotten. He turned and walked back inside, his steps slow but sure. For the first time in a year, he requested an audience with the full council. They gathered in the crystal chamber, faces grim, robes disheveled. Even the reptilian ambassador looked afraid. Elias stood on the speaker's disc and spoke one last time. "You have a choice. You can keep hiding behind your pride, or you can admit you were wrong. The fold cannot be fought with weapons. It can only be contained by unity, by listening. The humans left a way, but it requires trust and sacrifice." No one spoke. Then the High Arbiter asked, "Where is this way?" Elias looked toward the stars. "It's already being found." Far away on a frozen moon, Rin placed her hand on the black sphere, and the beacon began to glow. The beacon glowed brighter with every passing second, pulsing like a heartbeat in the frozen dark. Rin stood back, her breath fogging in the cold air of the chamber. The black sphere hummed louder now, its surface rippling with faint lines of blue light. The AI's voice echoed in her mind, calm but urgent. "It has begun. The network is waking." Outside, the storm had stopped. The sky above the moon was clear, and the stars seemed to lean closer as if watching. Then, one by one, distant points of light flickered. Not with the steady shine of stars, but with sharp, rhythmic pulses. Human ships, dozens of them, hundreds, scattered across the galaxy, hidden in dead zones and forgotten orbits, their AI cores answering the call. Rin knew what this meant. Humanity hadn't just vanished. They had prepared. Every derelict freighter, every abandoned station, every silent pod, they were all part of a plan. A last defense, and she had just turned the key. Back on Oryx Prime, the Conquered felt it too. Not as sound, but as a shift in the fabric of space itself. The star map in the council chamber flickered wildly. New signals appeared, faint, human, but strong. They formed a pattern, like threads weaving through the void. Elias stood among the delegates, no longer ignored. They looked to him now, not with mockery, but with desperate hope. "What is happening?" the High Arbiter asked. "The failsafe," Elias said. "Humanity built a net of folded space. If it holds, it can cage the fold long enough to stop its spread. But who controls it?" asked a delegate with feathered limbs. "No one," Elias replied. "It's automatic. But it needs time. And silence. If the Conquered keeps firing weapons, jumping recklessly, shouting into the dark, they'll tear the lattice apart before it forms." The council fell into tense debate. Some wanted to send fleets to protect the beacon sites. Others argued they should flee to the outer arms of the galaxy. But Elias shook his head. "Running won't help. The fold feeds on noise, on chaos. The only way to survive is to be still, to listen." Meanwhile, the anomaly at the galactic core grew. It was no longer just a shadow. It was a storm of twisted geometry, swallowing stars whole. Planets vanished without warning. Space itself warped near its edge, folding in on itself like crumpled paper. Entire civilizations on the inner rim sent final messages, screams cut short, prayers lost in static, before going dark forever. The fold was no longer hunting. It was feasting. On the frozen moon, Rin watched as the sphere rose from its pedestal, floating in midair. Data streamed across the chamber walls, maps, equations, warnings in languages long dead. One phrase repeated in bold letters, "Do not break the silence." She understood. The lattice wasn't just made of ships and AI. It was made of intent, of stillness, of trust. She powered down her ship's engines, shut off all comms. Even her suit's heater she turned low, so only her breath marked her presence. Hours passed. The pulses from the human ships grew stronger, forming a web of light across the galaxy. Where the threads crossed, space shimmered, bending in ways that defied physics. The fold slowed as it met this new barrier. It did not stop, but it hesitated. For the first time, it faced something it could not simply unmake. On Oryx Prime, the Concorde followed Elias's advice. Fleet stood down. Stations powered to minimum. Even the council chamber fell silent. No debates, no orders, just waiting. Elias stood at the observation deck again, but this time he was not alone. Delegates from a dozen species joined him, staring into the void. They saw it, the faint glow of the lattice like a spiderweb spun from starlight, holding back the dark. Then, without warning, the fold struck, not with force, but with memory. Across the galaxy, beings began to see things. Lost loved ones, forgotten homeworlds, dreams they'd buried long ago. The fold didn't just consume matter, it consumed meaning. And now it was flooding minds with stolen pasts, trying to break their focus, to make them scream, to shatter the silence. On the frozen moon, Rin saw her brother, dead 10 years, killed in a mining collapse. He stood before her smiling, reaching out. "Come home," he said. Tears filled her eyes, but she clenched her fists and whispered, "You're not real." The vision faded. On Oryx Prime, the High Arbiter wept as he saw his firstborn child, lost to a plague centuries ago. He wanted to run to her, to hold her, but Elias placed a hand on his shoulder. "Stay still," Elias said. "She's gone." "This is the fold trying to break you." The Arbiter nodded, jaw tight, and turned away. The battle was not fought with guns or ships. It was fought in the mind, in the heart. In the choice to stay quiet when everything screamed for noise. And then from the edge of the lattice, something new appeared. Not ships. Not signals. Beings, luminous, shifting forms made of light and memory, drifting through the folds of space. They had no faces, but their presence carried weight, sorrow, resolve, and something like forgiveness. Humanity. Not as they were, but as they had become. They had not escaped death. They had transformed. By folding themselves into another layer of reality, they had become part of the universe's fabric. Watchers, weavers, guardians. They moved through the lattice, reinforcing it, mending tears where the fold had pushed too hard. Where they passed, the dark recoiled. Elias saw them on the star map. He knew what it meant. "They're here," he whispered. The Concorde watched in awe as the luminous figures surrounded the fold, not attacking but containing it, wrapping it in layers of folded space, drawing it inward, compressing it into a single point of stillness. The anomaly shrank. The stolen stars returned, dim but alive. The screams from the inner rim fell silent, not because the people were gone, but because the fold could no longer reach them. The lattice held, but it would not hold forever. The AI on the frozen moon spoke one last time to Rin. "The fold is caged, not killed. It will sleep. But if the galaxy forgets, if it grows loud and blind again, it will wake." "What now?" Rin asked. "Now you rebuild. You remember. And you listen." The sphere dimmed. The pulses from the human ships faded. The luminous figures began to withdraw, drifting back into the folds of space. Elias felt it too, the pull of something ending. He turned to the council. "They saved you, not because you deserved it, but because they hoped you'd learn." No one spoke. No one laughed. They only bowed their heads. And in the quiet that followed, the galaxy took its first true breath in a long, long time. The luminous figures lingered at the edge of sight, like reflections in still water. They did not speak, but their presence carried a weight that pressed gently on every mind in the galaxy. Where they moved, the fold's dark storm shrank further, folding in on itself until it became no larger than a single point of silence, a black pearl held in a net of starlight. The lattice of human ships dimmed but did not vanish. It remained, humming softly, a reminder and a warning. On the frozen moon, Rin watched the black sphere go dark. The chamber grew cold again, the walls still. The AI was gone. Its work was done. She stood alone in the quiet, her breath the only sound. Outside, the stars burned steady and clear. For the first time in months, the sky felt safe. She walked back to her ship, not in a hurry, but with purpose. She knew what came next. Not glory, not reward, just the hard work of telling the truth. Back on Oryx Prime, the council chamber was empty of noise. No debates, no arguments. The delegates sat in silence, some with heads bowed, others staring at the great star map where the fold had once raged. Now only a faint scar remained, a place where space bent slightly like a healed wound. Elias stood among them, thinner than ever, his eyes tired but clear. He had given everything he had, his voice, his home, his people. And still he stayed. The High Arbiter approached him. What do we do now? Elias looked at the scar in the stars. You build something new. Not an empire, not a council of the powerful, but a circle of listeners. The Arbiter nodded slowly. He turned to the others. We dissolve the conquered. Gasps rose, but no one argued. They had seen what pride had cost. They had felt the fold's hunger. They knew silence was not weakness. It was wisdom. One by one, the delegates removed their ceremonial robes. They left behind their titles, their claims, their old ways. In their place, they formed something simple, a gathering. No hierarchy, no voting blocks. Just beings who had learned to listen. Elias watched it happen, and for the first time in years, something like peace touched his face. Then, from the edge of the chamber, a soft light appeared. Not a projection, not a signal, a being. One of the luminous figures, humanity transformed, drifted into the room. It had no face, but its shape echoed the curve of a human shoulder, the line of a hand. It stopped before Elias. He did not speak. He only held out his hand. The figure touched his palm, and in that moment knowledge passed between them, not in words, but in feeling. Elias understood everything. Why they had left, how they had changed, what they had become. They were not gods, not ghosts. They were guardians now, woven into the fabric of space, watching, waiting, ready to return if the silence ever broke again. Then the figure turned to the council. Through Elias, its message came not as sound but as thought. Clear and calm in every mind, we tried to save you. Now you must save yourselves. And with that, the light faded. Elias swayed. His skin grew pale. His breath slowed. The other delegates rushed to him, but he raised a hand. It's time, he said. They helped him to the observation deck. He stood at the edge, looking out at the stars. The scar of the fold glowed faintly in the distance, a reminder of what had almost been lost. He took one last breath, and then he was gone. Not with a sound, not with a flash, just like the rest of humanity. Vanished into the quiet. The delegates stood in silence for a long time. No one spoke. No one moved. They honored him the only way they knew how, by listening. Days later, Rin arrived at Oryx Prime. Her ship was battered, her clothes worn, but her eyes were sharp. She brought with her the data chip from the escape pod, the logs from the AI core, and the truth of what had happened. She spoke to the new gathering not as a scavenger, but as a witness. She told them about the fold, about the warning, about the choice she had made on the frozen moon, and about the price humanity paid to give the galaxy a second chance. When she finished, no one clapped. No one cheered. They simply nodded. They understood. In the weeks that followed, the old Concord stations were repurposed. Archives were rewritten. Schools began teaching not just science and trade, but silence. How to listen to the stars, to each other, to the quiet spaces between words. The phrase, "you should have listened," was carved into every public square, not as a curse, but as a promise. Never again. Rin did not stay. She returned to her ship, the Mothwing, and set course for the outer rim. There were still lost signals to follow, still broken worlds to heal. She carried no title, no rank, just a mission, to listen and to remind. Far away, in the deepest folds of space, the luminous figures watched. They did not interfere. They did not speak. They simply waited, woven into the dark like threads of light, and the galaxy, for the first time in its long history, chose to be quiet. No more laughter at warnings. No more mocking of the small and strange. No more shouting over the whispers of the universe. They had learned, and in that silence life began again. Not louder, but wiser. Not faster, but kinder. Not as rulers of the stars, but as guests in a vast and ancient home. The stars burned on, and somewhere in the space between heartbeats, humanity smiled.